we were kind of leaning into what should we call this iteration of the circle, this particular spiral. So those of you that were in the last spiral, we were focusing on, right, that the self doesn't exist, that there's an emptiness to what we think of as self, all right, which is absolutely true, right? So as we dove into those practices and worked with that material in this last iteration, we began to recognize that the story of I, right, that this narrative that is being told all the time about who and what we are, that we're limited in time and space, that we are specific to this particular body, to this particular time, that this narrative, this story of I, is not nearly as reliable as it may seem. Okay? And that it actually, like every other story, simply arises and dissipates. Okay? So what we think we are is not exactly that. All right. So this story of I, and in some traditions that is referred to as ego, right? It's just that limited sense of what or who we are. So we really explore deeply, again, to let that story at least loosen its glue a little bit, all right? So we're not always being defined by that story that we know from the neuroscience of the thing is being rehearsed in what's referred to as the default mode network. So there's a neurologic underpinning for this narrative.
Also referred to as autobiographical memory.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But when we begin to deepen and refine our meditative capacity, we see that even the memory that I am this body, right? That I am this name, this gender, this nationality, this race, all of that is just a story being told. All right. So that was our exploration during this last iteration. And it's a powerful one. There's immense discovery and clarity and liberation. So all of that to say, we were wondering, well, what do we call this one? Like, what should we call it? And it just arose spontaneously, well, this one is the way of self. And we're going to call the self the capital S, self. Because here's what happens, and this is really tricky territory. And so stay with us here for a moment. In spiritual work, in sadhana, which is a spiritual practice, there is a very seductive, very subtle, and very prominent tendency to what is referred to as spiritual bypass, right? If I can just get really steady in presence, if I can just get really 100% in transcendence, then I don't have to deal with any of this, right? Have you ever seen that in yourself? If I can just get calm and easy, right? And just like I can stay slightly back from all this shit that we call life, okay? Excuse my language. So the spiritual bypass is real. In the yogic understanding, the yogic naming of spiritual process, it is self. So there is nothing that is not spiritual. It is only our minds that try to create categories that say this is spiritual and that's not. All right. So this iteration of the circle is going to be the way of self. The way of self. And it's going to be looking at how do we begin to understand, recognize, and live that every single thing that is arising, without exception, is an emanation of the divine. Every single thing. And then what does it mean to live from that skillfully, with full recognition? Okay. So when we say self, you'll hear Jimbo and I, there are words that we feel comfortable with that have been part of our exploration over the years that will often kind of equate with self. And so that might be presence. That might be simple being, right? That might be God. That might be consciousness. That might be soul. there are lots of ways that you can name self, okay? And this is that deepest, truest, highest reality that we have a sense of and are compelled by in spiritual practice.
The way we're going to work together in this spiral can be characterized as the Tantric path. So the word Tantra for many people will invoke thoughts of special sexual exercises or stuff like that, and that's really a misreading of what Tantra is. It doesn't exclude sex, but it is by no means focused on that. It includes everything. As we were saying before, it's the path of experiencing everything that arises as the singular reality, that none of it is apart or separate, and that every single event, moment, perception is a doorway into this Chitti Shakti, the wordless, the guru, love, spirit. Yeah. So, in other words, there's not anything separate from the path of Tantra. And in fact, Tantra intentionally brings us to work with whatever is arising. And every sense pleasure is an opportunity to experience the wonderfulness of presence, of being that allows us to have that pleasure and to pass that pleasure on into this amazing presence that we are, to fully experience that pleasure. Or any difficulty is an opportunity to discover how does that difficulty relate to this presence that we are, and what is that arises in response to that difficulty, where we're motivated to act in a way that's aligned with this presence, with this love. How does that love then motivate the right action in the right moment to deal with whatever the difficulty is? Or anger, fear, there's no experience that is not part of Tantra. Everything that arises. You wanted to answer that.
So it's both that the Tantric path is the recognition that every single emanation that arises is a pointer home, is a pointer to presence, is a pointer to all these amazing words that were 100% spot on. But the Tantric path also recognizes that the emanation itself is an expression of presence, is an expression of consciousness, is an expression of the goddess, of truth, of unified universal unity, right? Of love. Every single thing, not just as a pointer, but is that as well, right? So how to live there, here, how to live that grace, right? That's the Tantric path. That's the Tantric path.
And there's where the word guru comes in, that everything is the teacher. Everything is teaching us, always. If we remain receptive and humble, then we're always learning, always learning. And it's that power of grace that teaches us. So totally the opposite of spiritual bypassing. In Tantra, we are actually encouraged to lean into whatever seems difficult, wherever we feel like we want to avoid or we can bypass. Tantra says, better not to bypass, better to lean into and discover that this is the same presence, the same teacher, the same love. So it's all inclusive. So we're going to be working with this perspective, and although all the wisdom traditions include the wisdom of Tantra, it's not named as such. The full description of Tantra is most explicit in the ancient yoga tradition, and then also in Tibetan Buddhism. So we're going to be drawing a lot from those traditions, but we'll also draw from a lot of other traditions. And we're going to really emphasize the great poets, because they give voice to this nitty-gritty integration process of full embracing of life, fully accepting the challenge to align everything that we are with this love. So we're going to be drawing on the great poets from wherever they spoke.
So the this Kashmir Shaivite lineage that Jim and I and several people in the circle are naturally aligned with, and kind of just find ourselves in the current, is, again, as he said, just one particular way that the truth of what's here arises. But this broader school of Tantra can also be understood as Trika, or the Trinity. And that there's just one oneness, there's one unity, right? One just means one, one means not two, there's one. But that as human beings, we experience and can recognize three different qualities, right, of this oneness, right? So there's that which is completely transcendent, which is completely still, never moves, never changes, is 100% ground, never changes, okay? So there is, like, we might call that Shiva, right? We might call that the Father. Okay? We might call that Buddha. Okay? And then there is the energy of this. There's that which is moving and alive, the exploration, that everything that's manifesting, that's changing, that's expressing, that's evolving, the liveliness, the creativity, the expression. We might call that element, right, of the Trinity, we might call that Shakti, the goddess. We might call it the Holy Ghost. We might call it the Dharma, right? It is that which is in expression. And then there is what is that experience of that unique expression. You know, one of those phrases I love to use is the adornment, right? That every single emanation is an adornment. So that means every one of you, every one of us, every one of everything is a unique and precious expression, right, of that one that is a dynamic, expressing, creative energy that then has a particular way it gets expressed. We might call that the sun, right? We might call that the Sangha. So being able to see that there is, at any point and at all times, all of those are at play. There's that which is underlying, which never changes. It is just that pure knowing that Jem spoke to in our meditation, just the knowing, right? But the knowing can't know unless there's something moving, right? So this is the energy the vibration that the tantric teachers are extremely skillful at working with the energy, the vibrations. So that's what we're going to be doing with the poetry, right? Is how the words move us, right? How words move, because they too are vibrational expressions of the one, right? So we're going to then also begin to see how it is then expressed uniquely through each individual, okay? So this is the Trinity. So this is the triangle. This is, in sacred geometry, the triangle is always at play, okay? So we're going to begin to look at and explore these particular aspects of the one, and we're going to do our best to honor deeply whichever lens we find ourselves in, So we can find ourselves in the lens of the individual, of the unique one, the unique expression here. Sometimes we find ourselves in the lens of the vibratory, just the energy, the spirit, the Holy Ghost, the Shakti, like whatever words, again, make sense to you. And sometimes we'll have the lens of just that underlying, just that pure knowing. Okay, so we're going to be playing with different forms of spiritual technology. How do we live and express and stay in alignment with, in the recognition of whatever lens is at play? Does that make sense? Can you guys kind of begin to get a sense of what the territory is we're going to be working with this spiral? Okay.
And as we do this, we will transverse over and over and over again, either spontaneously or in our practice. We will transverse 3 stages. So the Trinity also includes these 3 stages that are each of these 3. So there's the stage, and right now I want to kind of walk us through these stages right now in this moment. These stages are all present. So stage 1 is to allow attention to relax and notice this spontaneous, amazing, conscious presence that has been here before the beginning, if there ever was a beginning. You can't actually find it. If you look for a beginning, you won't find it, because this has always been here. Even if we didn't notice it before, it's always been here. So be able to identify, recognize, feel this presence. This is the first stage. The second stage is to be able to richly notice the nature of this being, this amazing being, whatever word we apply to it. All those words that we said before, to explore its inherent nature, that it is actually has no limit, there's no boundary, that it is self-luminous, it shines of its own nature like the sun. We don't need to generate awareness, consciousness, presence. It's already always present. That it is, because it is always here, it can never be harmed by anything. The storms can come and go, and the sky is not harmed by the storm. The fog can fill up the space, and yet the fog will fade away, and the space has not been harmed by the fog. The sun can shine brightly in this space of presence. And as warm as the sun may be, it will not change the fundamental the liberation. That was a great word. That was this liberated nature that we have is never harmed, never changed, and therefore is preciously comforting when we can allow our attention to rest here for a while. We begin to feel this innate steadiness, peace, comfort from this reality that we have that's never been far away, that's always been right here, even if we didn't notice it. So there's a peace and a gentle joy that we learn to rest into, and that gets richer and richer and richer. And then the third stage is to, from this presence, to live our lives, to live caring for children, doing our work, doing our chores, feeling the body, that the body is the body is this precious home or vehicle for for this life, that we can have plenty of, we don't have to deny thoughts or push thoughts away. We only want the thoughts to be able to align, to actually reflect this presence that we are. That the thoughts, then the mind then becomes this wonderful servant, because the mind can beautifully express and channel and emanate the beauty of the love, the power, the greatness, the openness. That can all, the mind can partake of that when the mind is introduced and gets to know this reality that we are. Then the mind can be magnificent in its service. So that third stage never ends. Well, none of them ever end. None of them ever end or really begin, but especially the exploration of how to fully live this, to bring it to bear to every single activity, every single relationship, to align everything with this love, this reality. So that's the endless process of what's been referred to as the journey in God. So there's the journey to God, which you could say those first two stages of the journey to God, the journey to discover this presence and to know its nature. But then the journey in God is never, has no limit, no end, it's infinite. Each of us is infinite. We'll transverse those stages, millions of times. Wherever you find yourself in those three stages, be there and operate from there. And yeah.
And just remember that whatever is being experienced is exactly the emanation to be experienced in that moment. Because there's a strong tendency, and believe me, I've seen it myself, but when we're working with the recognition of what all of these energies are, is that subtle spiritual bypassing of like, oh, we'll put that one, not quite that. Okay? But every single one is an energy that wants to be known, wants to be seen, wants to be felt as a valuable expression. Okay, so so as we're leaning into these practices, whatever moves, just recognize that is grace, that is truth, that is love, that is God wanting to be known in that vibration. Okay.
And go gently at the same time.
Yeah, gently.
Sometimes it may feel too overwhelming. Then feel full permission. You don't have to. You don't have to integrate all of it all at once. In fact, you can't. It has to go at its own pace. So please be very gentle. If you need to close a door for a little while or a window, then go ahead and do that. And if there's something that is calling, if something within you wants you to comfort yourself for the time being with a cup of tea or a rest or a good sleep or whatever it is that's going to comfort you and prepare you to continue your journey, full permission to do that. This is not something, please do not push. Don't push the river. There are many turbulent currents. And so, especially right now, and our entire planet is challenged by so many different huge turbulent waves. So both personally and universally, go gently, please.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. So we will be, as we mentioned, we're going to be really working with words and the power of words, right? So in the beginning was the word. It is actually the emanation that creates the structure of reality. So we're going to be working very intentionally with words. And there are going to be two poems that we're going to be asking you to lean into and be with this week. And remember, everything that we ask is just a suggestion, right? No arm twisting here. And this first one is written by Adi Shankara, the first Shankaracharya, and was a great, great lover of truth, of God, of the emanation, and an incredibly powerful poet saint. He was actually the guy who who's given the recognition of really formally naming the whole non-dual practice or understanding of Advaita Vedanta, the teachings of non-duality, that this is not two, it is only one. And but not only did he have that discernment of mind, which is a lot what we were working with last spiral, but also just this deep devotion to all of this being the emanation of I like the word goddess. And so this one, we will
we did send it.
We sent you the words, and we're going to sing it. Jim and I will sing it together so you can hear how it's intoned, and then we'll make a recording of that so you can practice the intonation. What we're going to recognize with words, and probably everyone in this circle is already very aware of, is that words have an incredibly power, a particular unique power when they're just reflected on quietly, and they have a different power when the power of voice is added to them, right? The frequency is intensified. So we'll ask you to, if it's comfortable during your practice time this week, to use this intonation. Again, not a demand, but an invitation. So I'll just read the words first so you can just hear the pronunciation, and then Jim and I will sing it so you can hear the intonation. So it goes like this. Atma Tvam Girija Mati Sahachara Prana Shariram Griham Pujate Visayo Pabogarachanaha Nitra Samadhi Stitihi Sanchara Pariyo Pradakshina Vidhi Stotrani Sarvagiro Yaryak Karma Karomi Tatak Akilam Shambho Tavara Danam. Do you want to just give a quick English translation?
Yeah, it is.
Did you write it? Oh, okay. So once you can.
Yes, and I'll be sending out actually a word-by-word translation of the Sanskrit, because at least for me, when I chant these, if I know the actual meaning of each word, then they eventually become fully imbued with that meaning. So when I speak the Sanskrit mantra, it means what I can feel what it means. So this is a translation. You are myself, my very soul. My mind is Shakti, your soulmate. My energies of breath, circulation, digestion are your attendants. My body is your home. My worship is to offer to you all my sense pleasures. My sleep is your state of deep peace. Wherever I step, I am circling around you. My every word praises you. All my actions, without exception, are my gifts to you, dear benevolent one. And the way that Kimberly and I engage this is we meditate together in the morning, and then at the end we sing this together. So that kind of just sends us out into the day. So you don't need to use it that way, but if you'd like to, that's what we found to be a beautiful practice.
Mm-hmm. And so again, it really is just a remembrance that all of this is divine expression, everything. And it's having that, like every step, every word, every verb, like everything without exception. So,
and I'd like you to notice also, this is non-dual devotion. So it's very devotional, but it's a devotion in which there's no separation from the devotee and that which is adored. There's no separation between what we would call God and what's created. There's only the one, and yet it's rich with devotion.
Okay. So this is the way the intonation goes.
Atma Tvam Girijagmati Sarachara Prana Sharinam Graham Pujate Visaryo Pabo Garachanaha Nidra Samadhi Stiti Sanchara Parayo Pradakshina Vidhi Stotrani Sarvagiro Yadya Karma Karomi Tata Akilaham Shambho Tavadadanam. So we'll have a recording of that independently if you'd like to work with that intonation. And then the last thing that we'd like you to do is to contemplate a poem by a contemporary mystical poet, and her name's Rebecca Folsom, and it's a very tantric poem. So I'm going to read it to you, and then it'll be in the summary that Jimbo sends out as well. Okay. And the title of this poem is, I Would Rather Make Wine of Life. I would rather make wine of life. I have died 1,000 times clinging to life. Breath stops, muscles go rigid, trying to freeze frame it, do it over again, reshape it, perfect it, be better. I am done wrestling the life out of my experience. I would rather make wine of life. Each experience juicy and unique, ripe, picked, squeezed, savored. Not about perfection. For it is the mixture of all these flavors that makes wine sweet. An elixir to be shared with friends as we sit around smiling, saying that was a good year, aged well. Each experience juicy and unique, ripe, picked, squeezed, savored. Not about perfection, for it is the mixture of these flavors that makes the wine sweet. An elixir to be shared with friends. As we sit around smiling, saying that was a good year, aged well. So practice invitations this week would be reflection on Rebecca's poem and seeing if whatever arises, right? Whatever arises as a rasa, as an element of what makes this sweet. The intonation of Atma Tvam, again, is that quiet, as that devotional recognition that with every step we are simply walking in God. Every word is an expression of truth. Every feeling, whatever quality it has, is an emanation of love. Right? So the Atma Tvam, and then the meditation recording that Jim started session with today. Again, just really
beginning to recognize more and more that it is boundless and that everything that arises is arising in and as presence.